Okay, so it looks like we've got a pretty hefty stack of news here.
Yeah, looks like it.
A lot from Nigeria today.
Yeah.
We've got the Nation newspaper, Daily Post Nigeria, Daily Trust, Punch newspapers, PM News Nigeria,
Lots of sources.
Vanguard
They've
News,
been busy.
and then we've even got some international stuff from Al Jazeera and the AP.
Yeah, a real global view today.
So we're diving into all that today, trying to get to the bottom of what's happening in Nigeria and what it all means.
I think what's really interesting is how these different sources kind of paint a really full picture of Nigeria right now.
Yeah.
You're seeing everything from local politics to the economy and even those global events that are shaking things up.
Right.
So, yeah, plenty to unpack today.
Let's jump right in. Let's start with politics. Edo State's got a new governor,
Oh, right.
Monday Okpebholo. And it looks like, well, the Nation newspaper, Daily Post Nigeria, Punch newspapers, PM News Nigeria, they're all reporting on it.
Wow, everyone's talking about it.
Yeah, his first move as governor, he appointed Fred Atua as his chief press secretary.
A new administration, new beginnings, right?
Right.
Although Punch newspaper is saying there's a bit of a clash brewing.
Oh.
Yeah, between Okpebholo's team and the outgoing Governor Obaseki. Seems like there's a bit of disagreement over inauguration funds.
Right.
So, yeah, I wonder if that's a sign of things to come, you know? Maybe a bit of a rocky road ahead.
Could be.
Worth keeping an eye on that.
Definitely. And the Nation newspaper and Punch newspapers, they're both reporting on Rabiu Kwankwaso.
Oh, the former presidential candidate.
Yeah, he recently visited the Abia State Governor, Alex Odi.
Right.
And, well, a lot of people are saying this could mean an alliance is forming maybe for the 2027 elections.
Interesting. Punch newspapers also mentions that the NNPP, you know, Kwankwaso's party,
Right.
well, they've criticized the visit.
Right.
So there could be some internal party dynamics at play there, too.
Things could get interesting.
Definitely.
Now let's talk about the economy. Daily Post Nigeria and Vanguard News have been looking into the Dangote refinery.
That's a big one.
Yeah, a lot of people thought local production would mean lower fuel prices,
Makes sense, right.
But it turns out the refinery is still buying crude oil in U.S. dollars.
Ah, so the prices are still tied to the dollar.
Yeah, which, well, doesn't really help the average Nigerian, does it?
Not really. And actually, Vanguard News is saying that banks are getting ready to increase funding for petrol importation.
What?
Yeah, to like $3.5 trillion. So it seems like we're still relying on imports, even with the local production.
Wow. That's,
Not quite the solution everyone was hoping for.
no, not really. And speaking of economic concerns, the NLC has issued an ultimatum.
Oh, right, I saw that.
Yeah, the Nation newspaper, Punch newspapers, PM News, Nigeria, Vanguard News, they're all over it.
Big news.
They're demanding state governments implement the new minimum wage. And they've set a deadline, December 1st.
Yeah, they're not messing around. They've already told workers in states that don't comply to start preparing for strikes.
Wow.
It's going to put a lot of pressure on those governors.
Definitely. Okay, now let's see what Daily Trust has to say about security. Looks like there's a new terror group in Sokoto and Kebbi states.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's called Lukarawa, and they've been stepping up attacks.
That's a worrying development, especially on top of everything else that's going on.
Yeah, it's a lot. But Punch newspapers and PM News Nigeria, they're saying that a delegation from Kebbi has gone to the Chief of Defense Staff.
Asking for intervention, I bet.
Exactly. And the military has launched a manhunt for Lukarawa members. The acting Chief of Army Staff is actually going to Sokoto himself.
To assess the situation firsthand.
Yeah, it just shows how seriously everyone's taking this new threat.
Makes sense. A new terror group definitely changes the landscape.
It does. Okay, shifting gears a bit. The Nation newspaper and Punch newspapers are reporting on FCT Minister Nyesom Wike.
He's always in the news.
Right. He's saying he's going to keep demolishing shanties in Abuja, the ones he says are security threats.
So he's pushing ahead with that plan, despite all the protests.
Yeah. I mean, security is important, but you have to wonder about the people living in those areas.
Exactly. Where do they go? What happens to their lives? It's a tough situation for everyone involved.
For sure. Okay, let's look at some positive news. PM News Nigeria and the Nation newspaper are reporting on the National Commission for Almajiri and out-of-school children's education.
I was just reading about that.
Yeah, it looks like they're working on a plan to address the challenges in Almajiri education.
That's great news. It's a complex issue, but it's good to see they're taking concrete steps.
I agree. Education is so important. Okay, before we move on to the global scene, let's check in with Vanguard News.
What they got?
Well, they did a special report on how Nigerians are spending their money. They've listed the top 10 things people are spending on.
Even with the economic hardship.
Yeah. And get this, less than half of Nigerians have any savings at all.
Wow. That's a pretty telling statistic, isn't it? It really gives you a sense of how people are coping with the current situation.
Yeah, it does. Okay, now, zooming out a bit, Al Jazeera and AP News are all over the U.S. presidential election.
Big news.
Huge news. Donald Trump won.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's sending shockwaves across the world.
I bet. What does this mean for Nigeria, do you think?
That's the big question, isn't it? AP News is reporting on a call between Trump and the German Chancellor, Olaf Scholz.
Right.
They talked about a return to peace in Europe. But how this impacts African nations, well, that remains to be seen.
It's a whole new era, and nobody knows for sure what's going to happen next.
Exactly. We've covered a lot, haven't we? From a new governor in Edo State to the Dangote refinery, and now Trump's back in the White House.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. But we're not done yet. There's still more to unpack, so stay tuned.
And if you want to keep up with all this news, make sure you subscribe to Foresight News TV on YouTube.
Yeah, they've got you covered with all the latest updates and analysis.
We'll be back soon to dive even deeper.
It's pretty wild, right? All this happening in Nigeria with Trump back in the White House.
Yeah.
Yeah, the world's watching, that's for sure.
I mean, for a country like Nigeria,
Right.
so dependent on partnerships and aid,
Yeah,
these changes in the U.S. could have a huge impact.
definitely.
Yeah.
But let's bring it back to Nigeria for a moment.
Yeah.
PM News Nigeria has an update on that whole minimum wage situation.
Oh, right.
The NLC is taking things up a notch.
Oh, so?
They're telling workers in those states that haven't implemented the new minimum wage to go on strike
Wow.
starting December 1st.
They're serious, huh?
It seems like it.
That's going to put those governors in a tough spot.
Yeah, big time. Speaking of high stakes, Punch Newspapers has more on that security situation in Sokoto and Kebbi states.
Right, with that new terror group.
Yeah, Lukarawa.
What's the latest?
It looks like the military is really stepping up their efforts. They've launched a full-scale manhunt.
Ah, it sounds intense.
Yeah, and the acting chief of Army staff, he's actually gone to Sokoto himself.
To get a better grasp of what's happening. It's one thing to send troops, but it's another to go there in person.
Right. Shows how seriously they're taking this.
Definitely. But, tackling terrorism isn't just about military force.
No, of course not.
You got to address those underlying issues, too.
The poverty, lack of opportunity.
Exactly.
Right. Okay, let's take a break from all the serious stuff for a minute. The Nation newspaper is talking about a public lecture.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, hosted by the Gazelle News. It looks like the deputy governor of Lagos State, Obafemi Hamzat, will be there.
Interesting.
And Senator Tokunbo Abiru, too.
It could be a good opportunity to hear from them, get their perspective on things.
I agree. Okay, back to the economy. Daily Post Nigeria is reporting on a clash between supporters of the outgoing Edo State governor, Obaseki,
Right.
and the incoming governor, Okpopolo.
Things are getting heated, huh?
Seems like it. It's about inauguration funds again.
So that smooth transition of power might be hitting a few snags.
Yeah, maybe.
Hopefully they can work things out.
I hope so, too. Punch Newspapers is reporting that the NLC is accusing fuel marketers of using the situation to their advantage.
Oh, how so?
They're saying they're jacking up petrol prices.
To profit off the NLC's pressure on the government.
That's what they're saying.
That's pretty cynical.
It is, and it just shows how interconnected everything is, right?
Totally.
Minimum wage, fuel prices, the economy, politics, it's all tangled up.
Definitely. It's like a domino effect.
Okay, what else do we have? Vanguard News is saying that the NNPP has come out and criticized Rabiu Kwankwaso's visit to the Abia State governor.
So they're not happy about it.
Not at all. It looks like there's more to this story than we initially thought.
Internal party politics, maybe?
Could be.
Ah.
Is Kwankwaso making a power play? Is this the start of a new alliance?
Lots of questions.
Definitely. And the Nation newspaper has an article about the FCT minister Nyesom Wike.
Ah, yeah.
He's sticking to his guns.
About the demolitions.
Yeah. He's still planning to tear down those shanties, even though there's been pushback.
That's a tough one. I get the security concerns.
Right.
But you also have to think about the people who live there.
Absolutely. It's a complicated situation. PM News Nigeria has an update on things in the Northwest.
The banditry and terrorism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A delegation from Kebbi State has gone to the Chief of Defense Staff asking for military help against Lukarawa.
So things are escalating there.
Yeah, unfortunately. And then The Nation newspaper is highlighting what the National Commission for Almajiri and Out-of-School Children's Education is doing.
Oh, right. They're working on a plan to improve Almajiri education.
Yeah, and it's about time, really.
It's a huge issue. We need to give these kids the education they deserve.
Agreed. Okay, let's zoom out again. Al Jazeera is talking about the global reaction to Trump's victory.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of anxiety.
Understandably,
People are wondering what this America First approach will mean for the rest of the world.
we're all kind of holding our breath, waiting to see what happens next.
Yeah. And then there's this report from Vanguard News. It's pretty disturbing, actually. They're reporting on an increase in the number of kids scavenging for food.
Oh, no.
Yeah, at parties and prayer houses.
Because of the economic situation.
Yeah. It's a stark reminder of the reality for so many Nigerians.
It's heartbreaking.
It really is. We can't forget about those who are struggling, even as we talk about these bigger issues.
Absolutely. We have to keep them in mind.
We've covered a lot, from political drama to economic woes
Yeah.
and the global ripples of Trump's return.
We have. It's a lot to digest.
But our deep dive isn't over yet. There's still more to unravel.
We'll be back soon to explore it all. And remember, if you want to stay ahead of the curve, make sure you subscribe to Foresight News TV on YouTube.
They'll keep you informed with daily updates and analysis. Things change so fast, you know?
Mhm.
1 minute you're focused on one thing and then bam, something completely different pops up.
It's true. The world never sits still, does it? It's all about connections, though, seeing how it all fits together.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, let's see. Punch Newspapers has more on that Edo State situation.
Oh, right, with the new governor.
Yeah, that clash over inauguration funds, it seems like things have gotten worse.
Really? What's happened?
Okapaholo's team is now accusing the former governor, Obaseki, of trying to sabotage the whole transition process.
Yikes, that's a pretty serious accusation.
It is. This whole handover of power is getting messier by the day.
Yeah, not ideal. A smooth transition is important for stability, you know?
Absolutely. Okay, moving on. The Nation newspaper has an article about the National Commission for Almajiri and Out-of-School Children's Education.
Oh, right, they're working on a plan to help those kids.
Yeah, trying to figure out how to address all the challenges.
It's a big task, for sure.
It is. But it's so important, you know. Education is key.
Absolutely. When you invest in education, you're investing in the future.
Couldn't agree more. But, you know, it's not all good news.
What else is happening?
PM News, Nigeria is reporting on a potential new terror threat in Kebbi State.
Oh, no, not another one.
Yeah, it's a group called Lukarawa, and they've been stepping up their attacks.
So much for a peaceful transition. On top of everything else, it's like one thing after another.
It is. And it just goes to show you can't just rely on military solutions, you know. You have to address the root causes of insecurity, too.
Absolutely. Things like poverty, unemployment, marginalization, those all play a role.
For sure. Okay, Daily Trust is reporting on the protests against those demolitions in Abuja.
Ah, right, Minister Weich's plan.
Yeah, it's getting a lot of pushback from civil society groups.
They're saying he's not considering the rights of the people living there.
Right. I mean, security is important, but you can't just displace entire communities without a plan.
It's a tough situation, a real balancing act.
It is. And on the economic front, things aren't looking so good either.
What's Vanguard News saying?
They've got a report on the rising inflation, the unemployment, the falling value of the naira.
That's tough. Makes you realize that all these big events, they have a real impact on people's lives.
They do. Okay, zooming out to the global scene, AP News is saying that world leaders are reacting cautiously to Trump's victory.
Right, trying to figure out what it means for them.
Exactly. His America First policies could change everything.
We're all kind of in wait-and-see mode right now.
Yeah. The future's uncertain, both for Nigeria and the world.
That's true. But hey, we've learned a lot today, haven't we?
We have. About politics, the economy, security, global events. It's been a whirlwind.
But that's the thing about the world. It's complex, it's interconnected.
And staying informed is more important than ever.
Couldn't agree more. So, to all our listeners out there, keep learning, keep questioning, keep engaging.
And if you want to stay up to date on all the latest, make sure you subscribe to Foresight News TV on YouTube.
They've got you covered.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. It's been a journey.
Until next time.